Disclaimer: this lecture video is based on the module that is provided by the college and the university. Unfortunately, the said PDF module is exclusively downloadable for NEUSD CI students only. Good day, this is Jal Konanan, and here is the part 2 of our lecture in Introduction to Mobile Apps. Quick recap: on the last video, I've discussed the categories of mobile apps, the distribution platform, and the three types of mobile apps, which is the native, web-based app, and the hybrid app. And today we will going to continue our discussion. And here are the contents of this video. Number one on the list, getting started with Ionic and Angular. Ano ba si Ionic? Bakit ba natin gagamitin si Ionic? Ano ba si Angular? At bakit ba natin gagamitin si Angular? Development tools. We're going to list all development tools that we will going to need to develop a hybrid application. Then, installation of the said development tools na gagamitin natin for this course. And lastly, we're going to create our simple mobile application. So let's jump to it, beginning with our first topic, getting started with Ionic and Angular. But before we dive into Ionic and Angular, I just want to have a review because for me, I think mas madadalayan kayong maintindihan kung ano ba si Ionic and Angular with this approach. If you're going to remember, para makabuo ka ng isang website, kailangan mo ng basic coding architecture or meron tayong structures or codes na dapat matutunan para makabuo ng isang website. For example, front end in particular. Well, you need first a structure. And if we will going to compare it sa pagbuo ng bahay, ito yung parang pinaka-fondasyon and yung pinaka-backbone mo or yung pinaka-rough finish ng bahay mo. And ang ginagamit nating language dyan is yung tinatawag nating Hypertext Markup Language or the HTML. Like this one. It is actually a basic structure of HTML wherein it contains one text box and one button. And you will notice also that in HTML, apart from tags na ginagamit natin, we are using attributes and its respective value para ma-customize yung mga tags natin. So kung napansin niyo, parang ang simple pa lang niya, no? Walang kulay, talagang basic na basic yung itsura niya. Kaya nga siya tinawag na structure. Ngayon, para magkaroon siya ng kulay or para mas gumanda yung itsura niya, kailangan natin lagyan ng design. Diyan naman pumapasok ngayon si cascading style sheet. So katulad nito. If you will recall also, we have a different types of CSS. The embedded CSS, which is sa loob ng opening tag inilalagay. The internal CSS, wherein it is placed inside the head tag na katulad nito ginagamit natin sa example. And then the external CSS na kailangan mong gumawa ng another file which is .css as file extension. So in that code, napansin niyo medyo nagbago yung text natin and then nagkaroon ng kulay yung button. So with the use of a simple CSS, syempre mas marami pa tayong magagawang design or mas mapapaganda pa natin yung HTML natin kung magdadagdag pa tayo ng mas maraming CSS. And now, para magkaroon ng final touch or finishing touch yung ating bahay, dadagdagan pa natin siya ng mas maraming decoration. Or in website naman, magkakaroon tayo ng interactivity na tinatawag wherein doon na pumapasok si pop-ups, animation, notification, alerts, effects, and etc. So para makagawa tayo ng mga ganon, ang ginagamit natin is yung JavaScript or JS, like this one. In this part naman, I created an on-click event on our button that will trigger the alert me function. The basic idea of this JS example is to alert the text that is being typed by our user na then nilagyan ko na lang siya ng hello before the written text. Before, matagal at mahirap gumawa ng website. It is because kailangan talagang hard-coded mo sila ginagawa. But now with the use of efficiency, nandiyan na yung mga tinatawag nating libraries and frameworks. Wherein libraries and frameworks are pre-built codes na makakatulong mo para mas maging madali yung pagko-code mo. Like in CSS, instead na gagawa ka ng sarili mong style sheet, gagamit ka na lang ng tinatawag nating CSS frameworks. At ang pinakakilalang CSS frameworks ngayon is yung tinatawag nating Bootstrap. Okay, so we have also in JavaScript, meron tayong library. Diyan pumapasok si jQuery. And more example of JavaScript frameworks like Vue, React, and Angular. Well, if you don't have any idea how libraries and framework works, here's a basic example. In this demo, I will be using W3 CSS, which is basically a CSS and not a JavaScript framework. Those are completely different. So go to w3schools.com. You will see on the left side under references the W3 CSS downloads. Copy and paste the codes in the blank file and save your file as any file name you want as long as it is .css. But in my case, I'll name it w3.css. On our HTML file example before, instead of using internal CSS, we will be using the W3 CSS framework. Create a link tag and set the href attribute to its location and file name. And for this to work, add a class attribute into any of your desired tags. In this example, I've added class to input and button. Now, if we're going to ask, saan nakuha yung W3 input, W3 bordered, or value ng class natin? Well, almost all frameworks has its documentation for us to have a guide kung ano ba yung mga ilalagay natin dito sa mga value na ito. If we will going back to w3schools.com/w3css, you will see different elements on the left side. And when you click it, it will show you different variety of example and how to use it para gumana si framework. Going back to our example, you will see that without using any CSS code, we can have a faster and efficient way to design our website using these frameworks. And if you take a look closely into our W3 CSS codes, it is actually a pre-written CSS codes lang wrapped in classes kaya sa value ng classes natin siya inilalagay. Reminder, it doesn't mean na kapag framework ay sa class na siya inilalagay. May mga framework na iba ang approach especially on JavaScript kaya I suggest that always refer to their provided documentation. So, if we combine those things, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, and frameworks, we can create a website. How about hybrid mobile application? What is the architecture of a hybrid mobile application? So basically, meron din siyang structure na tinatawag. Kung sa website, we have HTML. In this lesson, ang gagamitin natin for structure is the Ionic framework, which is para lang din siyang HTML tags, pero ang structure na meron si Ionic framework is level 999. Parang ganun ang idea. If W3 CSS framework has a W3 input, W3 bordered, na ang nasa loob ni W3 bordered, W3 input is pure properties and values or CSS things. Si Ionic Framework naman, meron siyang tinatawag na web components. At ang nasa loob ng web components ay HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And since we are comparing the structure of a website into a hybrid mobile application, so let's take a look of their similarities para mas madali pa natin maintindihan. Here is an example of a basic HTML tag. And on the other hand, here is an example of an Ionic web component. Take a look of the similarities. Kung papansin ninyo, parehas silang may open and close tag. Same concept yung ginagamit nila. Another one. This is an example of a HTML tag with attribute and a value. And here is an example also of an Ionic web component with attribute and a value. And if you will notice, halos parehas lang din sila ng approach. Because when you are using this, yung button, which is yung HTML tag, ang meron lang sa kanya is purely HTML. But when you are using Ionic web components, you are using ion-button consists of HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. That's why, ang tawag sa kanya is web components, not HTML tag. And when it comes naman sa design, in our course, sa ituturo ko sa inyo, it is optional. Or po pwede kayong gumamit ng mga custom CSS. And for interactivity plus efficiency, marami tayong po pwedeng gamitin like JavaScript, yung pure JavaScript. We have React, Vue, and all of those are supported ni Ionic. Kasama na dyan yung Angular, which is ito yung talagang gagamitin natin. In summary, Angular, or we can use, as I said, React or Vue plus Ionic, and HTML, CSS, and JavaScript
Or in our case, we can set aside view and react. At pag pinagsama-sama natin yung mga yan, well, then we can create a progressive web application or PWA, which is happen to be the fourth type of mobile application. So ngayon kung nagtataka kayo, ano na ang nangyari kay hybrid application? So kailangan lang natin ng bridge na tinatawag. And that bridge, yun yung mga applications na katulad ni Cordova and Capacitor. And the task of that bridge is to transform a progressive web app into native-like-ish mobile application or also known as hybrid mobile application. Since may idea na kayo sa mga gagamitin natin, kailangan ninyong mag-recall or ito yung mga prerequisites sa pagde-develop ng hybrid mobile apps para mas mapadali yung buhay ninyo. Number one, kailangan nyo i-recall yung basic HTML, which is the structure, elements, tags, properties, values, etc. Next one is CSS. Basically, structure lang ng CSS. And basic JavaScript like document object model or yung DOM, functions, methods, basics like variables, conditional statement, repetition, or loops. And I said review. Okay? So according nga dun sa may DJ Pogi ng buhay mo, understanding code's use or function is better than memorizing it. Pero hindi niya sinabing don't memorize codes. Kasi eventually, sa katagalan, habang ginagamit mo yung mga codes na yan, nakakabisado mo na siya. Lalo na ngayon, madadagdagan kayo ng dalawang pag-aaralan, which is yung Ionic framework and then yung Angular. So here are some pros when we are going to develop a hybrid mobile application using Ionic and Angular. Number one code base for Android and iOS and Windows. Number two, it provides useful pre-created app. Number three is good documentation. And for the cons, number one, it is a framework dependent. Meaning to say, in the future, for example, yung component na ito ay na-deprecated na, wala kang choice kundi palitan yung component na yon ng bago. And the worst case scenario is, kung marami kang ginamit na component sa ganon, marami ka din papalitan. The next one is the hardware compatibility issues. Kung minsan sa sobrang dami kasi ng mga inilalabas na devices ngayon, like mobile devices, medyo mahihirapan kang humanap ng API. Next topic, development tools. These are the development tools that we're going to use. First, a code editor or an IDE. You can use any IDE that you're comfortable with, maybe like Sublime, Visual Studio Code, or Atom. Then Node.js. We will use it for installing Node Package Manager or NPM, and a browser that will serve as our emulator for now. Majority of these applications can be installed in your computer using Wizard installation, which is basically Next and Agree are the most common options. That's why Node.js and Ionic na lang yung makikita ninyong step-by-step installation in this video. Yung iba, ipapakita ko na lang kung saan ninyo mada-download. So to check if we have successfully installed yung ating Node.js, type nyo lang to. And kung meron lumabas na version, ibig sabihin, we can proceed to our next step. So dito sa part na to, pinapakita lang na kailangan naka-install muna yung Node and NPM environment bago mo install si Ionic. So to properly install Ionic, type nyo lang to sa command prompt ninyo. Again, for double checking, type this one.
Now let's create our first app. To guide us on this procedure, I suggest that you go into Ionic website and let's refer to it. In the home page, click install, then scroll down a bit and find start an app. Or in the developers tab, Ionic docs, CLI installation, start an app, and type this code on your command prompt. Instead of tabs, you can change it by using blank or side menu. Bago natin i-start yung app, kailangan ayusin muna natin kung saan natin ilalagay yung application. Since I'm in C, users, gel, location, and gusto ko siyang ilagay sa desktop, I will going to use basic command prompt syntax cd, which means change directory, or in other words, it's like saying go to this folder. If you want to move in a directory one step backward, use cd dot dot. If you want to go to the root directory, use cd backslash. You can also change the directory using this one. Now we can start typing Ionic, start, followed by any name you like. But I will choose the name First App instead. Then what is the type of starter application you need? In my case, I'm going to choose blank, then press enter. Let's choose Angular as our framework. If this question pops out, integrate your new app with capacitor, no this time. So basically what is happening right now, NPM is downloading the needed files from repositories, kaya in that case, we need an internet connection in this phase. After downloading, it will ask you to create an Ionic free account, which still, you can continue to your app by typing it no. So these are the downloaded files, and we can now run our app. Go to their website, then type this code on command prompt. Change the directory to your app. In my case, first app. Then type Ionic serve. Wait for this message to appear, then on our browser's address bar, type localhost 8100. At first, mukhang hindi pa siya mobile app, but if you right-click on your browser, inspect element, toggle this device toolbar, you can now choose various device from here na mag-emulate ng specific device screen natin. Now, let's modify this blank page. Open your IDE, and when you are using Sublime Text Tree, click Open Folder, and let's find First App folder on desktop. On Source folder, open App, Home, and find home.page.html. Let us change this title, then save it. As you can see, in our browser, napalitan na yung title. Now, let's try to inject some basic HTML tags and put some embedded CSS afterwards. Of course, we can use the Ionix web components. Again, on their website, find component tabs, and this item on the left side are the list of Ionic web components. On the other side of the page is the description, usage, and other information about specific web components, and it also specifies codes for a specific framework. Now, let's copy and paste this code to our home.page.html. Then change the value of that button. And there you go, instant button.
Kaya nga kahit na hindi mo na masyadong kabisaduhin yung code, as long as you know the usage and function of that particular code, okay na. Just don't forget lang kung ano yung ginagamit mong framework when copy and pasting it. And that is the end of chapter 1. Thank you for listening and see you on the next video.